Hello friends, today is my 11th presentation on the subject of ethics in the real estate and the hospitality industry, and today's topic is meeting statutory conformances by the MEP designers in India. What I have included in this presentation is what are the list of key statutory acts which are relevant to the real estate industry, overview of the statutory activities which are performed in the real estate industry, what are the list of key statutory processes and activities performed specifically by the MEP designers, and provisions of the National Building Code 2016 which are related to the MEP services, and key MEP related statutory activities that can adversely affect the business performance in case not performed diligently. Now, there are, as per my understanding, 82 statutory acts which are relevant to the real estate industry in the Indian context, and here I am highlighting a few of these important ones which designers need to be aware of. For example, Real Estate Regulation and Development Act 2016 RERA related, Building and Other Construction Workers Act 1996, which is primarily for the construction related. Income Tax Act, it is relevant for designers because there is a issue of TDS involved. SEZ Act 205 and SEZ Rules 206, which are relevant in case the designing is for building a SEZ Special Economic Zone. Foreign Exchange Management Act, because there are activities related to the foreign exchange remittance or receipts. Goods and Service Tax Act 2017, which is related to the services in case we are receiving these consulting services from the outside consultants, if these are outsourced whether from India or from overseas. And then there are other acts which are generally applicable to the various functions. There are 13 functions which are prescribed, and there are other acts like Companies Act, SEBI Act, which is related to the stock exchange, Payment of Wages Act, Minimum Wages Act, Provident Fund Miscellaneous Act rules, Employee State Insurance Acts, Contract Labor Regulation Act, Payment of Bonus Act, Maternity Benefit Act, and so on and so forth. And these are relevant to the real estate function. I thought I'll just give an overview before specifically coming to the role played by the MEP designers. Now, as such, there are 13 functions which have been studied by me, which include the project, the design, the finance and account, the sales, marketing, contracts, materials, HR, and so on and so forth, sales, marketing, etc. And there are, as far as statutory activities are concerned, which service these 82 statutory acts I mentioned, there are about 113 statutory activities which are applicable. Now, these activities have been listed in my book in the Annexure 8 and 9, and sorry, not the statutory activities but the statutory acts. These are listed 82. These are listed in my Annexure 8 and 9. 48 are the ones which I have directly construction related acts, and 34 are the ones which are indirectly applicable through the supporting function like I talked about HR and others. Now there are 113 activities which are usually key activities which are there applicable in the real estate industry, and 56 are the ones which are to be performed by the designers, which includes architects and interior designers and MEP designers, and I have indicated these are 37 and 9 and 10 respectively. What I am going to cover in today's presentation is this focus on these 10 activities. These 10 activities, they are primarily, pertaining to the 5 key statutory processes which are there given in my chapter 3 of this, my book covering the MEP function in detail. And these pertain to meeting the RERA compliances, meeting the statutory regulations and taxation 2 numbers, obtaining licenses and approvals and maintaining statutory records, etc. 2 numbers, complying with the IGST matters 4 numbers, deduction of TDS on consulting services 1 number. These 10 activities are given in detail in chapter 3, and these are listed very meticulously in Annexure 21B in my book, and therefore it is not being duplicated. Here, a word about licenses. Now, license and approvals, I mean, as far as the MEP is concerned, this is related to the freshwater approval or pollution or fire approval, etc., which are relevant in the context of the MEP designers, HVAC, etc., which are relevant and required. Now, NBC National Building Code also specifies activities which are required to be addressed and taken care vis-a-vis lighting and electricals and air conditioning and acoustics and sound insulations and lifts and plumbing and landscape and signage, etc. There are prescribed requirements which are equivalent to almost equivalent to statutory acts, and they need to be complied with. Now, the exact clause-wise statutory requirements for MEP design function can be referred from the statutory acts, but in the next few slides, I am going to share what are the vis-a-vis these five statutory processes I have talked about. What are the impact of these if these activities are not performed diligently and professionally? How can they adversely affect the business, particularly from the focus of unethical issues? Now, I'm not going to share these activities detail of the statutory acts, etc., because these can be referred from relevant statutory acts. Here I'm going to focus primarily on the activities which must be performed diligently so that there is no adverse effect on the business. For example, in the RERA process 1, I talked about one activity: obtaining sanction plans approval through unfair means and uploading inaccurate information on the RERA website. Although usually the chief architects, they interface with the agencies, or they do the upload this data about the project details and etc. on the RERA website. MEP designers, they have to facilitate and provide a correct inputs information to this team from the MEP perspective. So they may have an indirect role in this. Second is meeting the statutory regulations and tax obligations. Number one is related to the RERA website. There are prescribed project report status and approvals to be taken, and these are to be reported on the prescribed frequency basis, and these are very given in detail in my handbook. So this information, if it is not given accurately, this can lead to adverse implications from the legal authorities. Then there is a very important requirement which is respect to the Goods and Services Act 2017, where whether it is a supply of the material or supply of the services, the finance team, they have to file a return which needs to show what are the outward and inward supplies or services which have been rendered outside or received from outside. And here also the finance teams or the legal team, they rely heavily on the inputs coming from the MEP designers to provide this information. Now third process is obtaining licenses, rules and all that, which I talked about, the what kind of licenses which are required. Now, for example, one more thing related to the licenses, that there are a couple of requirements with respect to the green building projects. Now, not complying with the requirement related to the green building applications, etc., or conformances, and obtaining approvals, or not maintaining the statutory correct records. Now, these, in case not performed diligently and professionally, these can lead to adverse implication on the business. Here also, particularly in the case of records, it is the prime responsibility of the legal team or finance team, but these people, designers, MEP designers, they have to maintain appropriate records. Now, IGST matters, Now there are different kind of returns which are required to be followed. Now here I have given some sections and rules which are of course subject to any time changes by the statutory government authorities, and here the returns, they need to be filed timely and accurately, and timely means that there are time norms prescribed by the government, by which date, etc. Now these, of course, these dates, they can keep on changing, or there can be amendments to the forms, which I am not talking, but the MEP designers, they need to be aware of these things. They have to contribute in terms of giving the correct inputs for the capturing the services which have been received, consulting services outsourced which have been received, and input tax credit which has been availed. Then there are similar services with respect to the any overseas imports of the services, consulting services which are there from the overseas consultants. They also need to be complied with. Then there are issues with respect to the GST payable and collected and paid, and ITC, input tax credit, which I have already covered. Here the role is primarily that of facilitation and providing correct information to the finance team. Then fourth one, the last one here, the maintaining the appropriate details over the suppliers in the context of the MEP designers, who are the main service providers. Supplier means in this context service providers. We have to maintain that details as per the requirement of this IGST rules. The last but not the least is the TES matter, which is the tax reduction at source. These services which are rendered by these outsourced consultants, TDS, tax reduction at source, has to be properly computed, and designers have to provide the necessary inputs on the what is the exact service which is required, invoice amount, and whether it is overseas or local source, and because there are different regulations and taxation rules which the MEP designers, they have to provide these inputs. Now these details, as I mentioned, they are covered in my book which I mentioned, and there is a blog also on my website which you can have look at that, which is reflected in my last slide, and there are some articles which you can refer to on the Facebook and LinkedIn, and you can also order this book on paperback or in the Kindle version on Amazon.com. Thank you very much.